Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It's Wednesday, July 23rd, 2025, just so you know what day it is. It's an important function for me to tell you what day it is. Sometimes I don't know. Sometimes you don't know. But if we're here together at the same time, I can always straighten it out by, looking at the calendar and the clock and letting you know. Wednesday, time to wake up. July 23rd, 2025, time to do this all over again. And, of course, there's plenty of fodder as usual. Jeffery Epstein. Just want to say that. And then, not because I have any particular news about Jeffery Epstein, although I do. It's just a thing I do in the morning. I wake up and, brush your teeth and say Jeffery Epstein and then go on about my day. There's news there. There's news everywhere. Donald Trump appeared before a camera and said something dumb yesterday. Several dumb things. Actually, maybe even a little more dumb than usual, I guess. So plenty to round up there. Plenty of real news, regular stuff. There's tariff news. Remember that I think this week and next week, according to Justin Wolfers, we should be expecting some 150 tariff letters to go out. This is what Donald Trump says is the negotiations with all the countries around the world. He sends them a letter and says what our tariff is going to be. And they say, I'm not sure if this came from a real person or not. This might be AI generated. I don't understand. I don't subscribe to that social media platform, so I never saw it. It may be that most of the countries in the world don't know what their tariff rate is with the United States because no one has communicated it to them, even if he does write these letters. But I guess the big news that everyone will point to in the financial world, I don't even know if people really will point to this, but it's in the newspaper. Japan has settled / not settled the issue with us. I believe they got a letter issued to them that told them they were getting a 25% tariff. But the big news here is victory at last. Their 25% tariff, which never went into effect, is going to be lowered to 15%, which may or may not go into effect itself, up from, on an average of about 2% before any of this nonsense started. So now it'll be the game of, it's 15% instead of 25. That's a 10% tariff cut. Or if you ask President Trump, 675 billion % tariff cut. And not a, 13% tariff increase. Well, that's the usual MO of Washington, arguing over whether or not the fake increase, which was then reduced, which also, by the way, has not been committed to paper anywhere. There's been an exchange of, I wrote a letter and we saw that he wrote a letter and the figure was discussed and we have to review it and we haven't approved it, and neither of you, and who knows what's going to happen. But luckily, we don't need Congress to approve these things anymore because there isn't one. They've left for, probably for the rest of the year. But I think they took it literally in their Republican conference, one big, beautiful bill, and then that's it. You get to go home. $175,000 a year for one big, beautiful bill, and then you can just go back home and, point to everyone else and say, no, you're the pedophiles. So things are going swimmingly, I guess. All right. Well, let's see. We could round up a couple of other items with Greg Dworkin, for instance, and let's see. We'll
without fanfare.
I don't know. I'm trying to think of what we'll put in the rotation here. You know what? This was always one of your favorites. Was the simple Imperial margarine fanfare.
Imperial margarine, my favorite.
Good morning, Greg, and
I can't believe it's not butter.
Greg, pass the butter.
Yeah.
What the hell are you doing? God damn it! Give it. Oh, I'm sorry. I mean, there's a lot of buried rage in that, but it was a product of its times.
Yes, it was.
Okay. Well, Greg is here. So what's news? Greg?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, sure.
Good.
Why? Do you want to hit your mute button?
I don't know. I can never tell.
Give it a try.
Well, I could hit my mute button, but I didn't
Wouldn't
know
do
whether or
anything.
not I had already hit my mute
No.
button. That's why I was asking.
Okay. Well, again, the professionalism of this show you people may be fainting at home
Yeah,
because I
today
have a sharp and on
I'm
the
playing
ball
with
wheel.
colors. I'm trying the different formats and
Oh,
such.
yeah, all
And
right.
I've never figured out how to do a carriage return. Like I want to space before I go to the next item,
Oh,
and
I see.
instead
But it
apparently I
sends it
publish it.
instead.
I
Okay.
don't get it.
Yeah. Well,
You
every
have to hit
format
shift
does it
return on
differently,
everything,
and
you know.
yeah. Okay. Well, that's news
Yeah, who knows?
after a
So
fashion.
here's the thing. Let's
Yes.
talk a little bit about the economy. We'll talk about some numbers.
Okay.
We won't do letters, you know. We won't do grammar. We won't do the difference between few and less. We won't do those things. Let's
That's
talk
okay.
about Diane Swank, who's chief economist at various and sundry places.
Wonk is in her name.
Yeah,
That's
Diane
cool.
S. Swank. Diane Swank.
Oh, I don't know what that was. Her whole last name was
SWONK
Swank.
is her name.
Huh. All
Yeah.
right. Good for you.
David S. Pumpkin. So Diane Swank says the mother of all front-running cycles right now. Late last year, imports started to pick up, notably from China. The 2018 continued through the next administration, but many firms rightly bet it would escalate with much higher tariffs with the president's return, and then those gains were turbocharged as tariff threats intensified. ADP payrolls dipped. The payroll data by ADP was revised several years ago. It no longer is meant to predict the official payroll survey, so you can't use that. Tariffs are playing havoc with economic behavior and data, triggering the mother of all front-running cycles. Imports soared in the first quarter. People were afraid of the tariffs. Then we saw a pullback in April. And then, you know, it's weird, she says, because the way things are structured is that a lot of the government measures simply aren't built to pick up really rapid changes. Like 2 weeks ago, there was a 50% tariff, and now there's a 10% tariff. But no, it's really 15, but actually it was 45. But, you know, they just can't pick up that stuff.
Yeah. Well, tariff collectors aren't really geared for that either, so they didn't do it.
Right. So the core measures of consumer inflation accelerated in February, and we in the Federal Reserve have a good idea that this would occur. And, you know, part of the problem here is just trying to keep up with what's going on. Earlier gains boosted production the world over. Consumers here regained some, but not all of their swagger. The rebound in equity prices helped, especially in an economy where Moody's has estimated that the top 10% of earners account for half of consumer spending.
Well.
So what happens is if the economy starts to slow, the bottom half, the bottom 90% start to feel it.
Yeah.
But the top 10% keep it going, so the numbers appear to be okay when they're really not.
Well, okay, I can understand the concept. No, I was going to say, well, okay, but it's not okay. But I understand.
So inequality has a lot of knockoff effects, she says. High-income households have their basic needs met. They save, they make riskier investments. At the same time, strapped low and middle-income households tend to take on unsustainable debt, which at times can seem like a boon to lenders until it doesn't. That's how you get bubbles. That's how things pop. That's what happened to the housing bubble a few years back.
Right.
Asset bubbles are there now. An extreme example was the subprime crisis. I don't know all the places bubbles are forming, but let's just say the stock market looks frothy right now.
All right.
Now add another issue. The economic data isn't designed to capture speed of shifts we're seeing. At the same time, budget cuts are crimping data collection. So we don't really know what's going on. We're flying blind.
That sounds promising.
And much of what we are seeing on store shelves, even now, still reflect a pre-tariff world. This is the same time that firms are actively mitigating the effects of tariffs by reshuffling supply chains and increasing the certification of parts that qualify for lower tariffs. Another factor preserving cash flow is leverage of what are known as bonded warehouses and free trade zones in the U.S. Goods come in and are registered as imports, but tariffs aren't collected until those inventories are withdrawn and drained. So you have to carry that inventory, and that's not cheap, but it's less expensive than actually paying the tariffs.
Yeah. Okay.
So the result is like there's a pool of reserve that companies can pull from for the moment. So there's a much smaller initial impact of tariffs and stronger global growth than one would expect. So the bottom line, tariffs are distorting the global economy, but the effects are not linear. They compound over time, and we're not going to know all the effects until later this year. It took a year for the full effects of the 2018 trade war to show up, and that's what's going to happen this time. So if you're wondering how come everybody said tariffs are really going to disrupt the economy and I don't quite see it, you don't quite see it because it's sort of hidden.
Hmm.
Is it still going to happen? Yes, just slower than people thought because companies and other folks who want to stay in business are very creative about figuring out ways to get around some of this stuff,
Yeah.
including just waiting it out because the market itself
Hmm.
is just ignoring whatever Trump says. He's Taco
I mean,
Trump, and well, there's a 75%,
yeah.
yawn. So what? Maybe not by next week. We'll see.
Yeah, that has to be figured in, and you wouldn't be faulted in the boardroom if you said, "Why don't we wait a week and see whether or not this goes away,
Yep.
or if he just forgets it."
In any
You have to
case,
try it. Hmm.
let's continue with some numbers. This time not on the economy, but let's look a little bit about recent polling. It's just some interesting stuff.
All right.
Yesterday, July 22nd. This is from CBS, and I'm checking the dates because it's really easy to get fooled by.
He's
Oh,
still
that's
in
a
business?
poll.
Okay.
Trump's approval among 18 to 29-year-olds, I think we covered this, fell from 55% in February to 28% in July. Disapproval
Is that a lot?
rose from 45 to 72. So that's a 54-point net swing.
Hmm.
That's, as Joe Biden used to say, a BFD.
Yeah.
18 to 29-year-olds. Why? Because like in New York in the mayoral election, they showed up. That's why.
Well, it was nearby. It's a
Yeah,
neighborhood-based election.
it was nearby, right? Trump approval among Black Americans, this from YouGov, in February of 2025, disapproved 67, approved 33. How did it get to be as high as 33? In July of 2025, July 18th, disapproved 85, approved 15. So we're getting back to normal there.
Hmm.
Okay.
Okay.
The only way to ignore these numbers is to ignore these numbers.
Oh.
Fake news. I have a poll from some other polling firm you never heard of that says no, it's different. That's the reaction from MAGA world. So, you just have to keep track of these things. New poll from G. Elliott Morris using Verisite data. Democrats lead the House generic ballot by 4. Trump's approval is underwater by 15. And voters are unhappy with Trump's deportations, plus support for third party collapses by 60% if Elon Musk leads it.
Oh.
So for those of you
Well,
who are interested in maybe considering a third party, not with this guy.
yeah. Look what happened to the first two. You really want a third one of these?
Well,
Try to sell
the
it.
model that people use
Yeah.
is, of course, Ross Perot.
Yeah. That's what we have.
So there's a nice
Recently.
a piece in Politico about that, why Ross Perot isn't the greatest model to use. And in effect, what they do is they go over the history of both, but they point out Musk's moment may have passed. Richard Hofstadter famously wrote, "Third parties are like bees. Once they sting, they die."
Hmm.
Musk may have already stung. He had plenty of money in the bank, but he spent much of his
They
political
stunk.
capital. So that's what they wrote. What I'm saying is, everybody hates him now. So how do you win with him? You add him to any discussion,
Hmm.
and the revulsion kicks in, and the popularity of that discussion that he's now in drops.
Yeah.
That's what happens.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's to be expected. He exited from Republican government more than unceremoniously. He was booted, essentially, and you got neither party, of course, any interest in boosting your reputation, and certainly not if you're going to be running against them. But yeah, not a large pool of Elon Musk supporters to draw from. The third party thing might otherwise be interesting to some, but yeah, I can see attaching Elon makes it worse.
And aside from both having a
Hmm.
lot of money and both eschewing either party,
Yeah.
not much of a dimes worth the difference between them, that sort of thing.
Right.
They're completely different people. People
Ross
who don't
Perot
remember, people not
Okay.
as old as we are,
Oh, my
David.
God. Well,
People who don't remember, H. Ross Perot was a church-going, don't swear in public, suit, white shirt, tie, button-down, IBM kind of guy.
That is
Actually
true.
got it started at IBM.
Yeah.
Elon Musk, not so much.
One
So
of the original
Perot
businessmen
could
in
claim
the
to
White
be
House
middle
days.
America in ways that Musk can't even begin to, not even including the fact that he's a South African immigrant.
Right.
But he's a drug-using, crazy South African immigrant.
And a pervert.
And so he doesn't represent middle America the way Perot could claim to.
Yes.
They're just different. See, he
Perot
doesn't
was
have the
twangy Texan, too.
Yeah, exactly. Folksy.
Yeah, right.
You could say a lot of things about
thing.
Musk, but folksy ain't one of them.
Right, true. I was just briefly trying to imagine Ross Perot leaping about on stage with his belly coming out from under his shirt, and I can't.
So the
can't even imagine
the only tool that Musk may have that Perot didn't have is play that Imperial margin thing.
Well, that's gonna take us some time here. What are we? Imperial. They gotta hit buttons, but something that he didn't have. All right, we're gonna announce it. It's what?
The Epstein files.
Oh, okay. Oh,
Musk has the Epstein files.
Does he? Yeah,
Perot never had that. Well, he's using it as an issue. He got thrown out of MAGA because he said, I'm really mad at Trump. And by the way, he's in the Epstein files. Remember that?
Yeah, I do remember that. I was just sort of wondering whether, I guess it's possible. Remember, his dodgy coup people stole all the computer. All the computer was stolen, and it's all computer now. And I guess maybe the Epstein files might be computerized as well. It's entirely possible that if there were files, they downloaded them while they were busy firing everybody at the Justice Department or something. Who knows?
I don't know if anybody knows this, but I'm the only one that knows. But files apparently can be computerized.
Yeah, that's what I heard. And I think his intent in being there the whole time was to steal as many of those files as possible.
Yes.
I don't know if he got around to that one or not. I think he was busy stealing more money than files.
Now, one of the ways you know that the Epstein story has legs is the various and sundry ways it metastasizes to other discussions or other venues, sports venues where all of a sudden the sports person will bring it up, or, supposedly non-political talk show radio, except it's podcasts, and then the host brings it up.
Epstein. What?
And so this Politico article talking about Elon Musk and Ross Perot predominantly notes, by the way, the Epstein saga certainly has an emotional resonance that could fracture Trump's base and leave the discontented looking around for an alternative. But how many single-issue Epstein voters will be there 1 year from now, let alone 3? So probably Perot's not going to succeed in that regard. But just throwing it in tells you something about the story itself.
Yes, true. And, high likelihood of the single-issue Epstein voter.
And there are some because it's QAnon.
There have to be, yeah. But I was wondering how many of them will take some sort of weirdo horse serum and die before they get a chance to vote.
They might, but they might not vote is also part of the deal here.
Yes, because we need to tell them is that the new voting machines are portals that will transport them instantly into a pizza dungeon. And
in any case, we'll talk about Epstein a little bit more in just a bit. But going back to Juliet Morris, he notes that, of course, the Democrats are winning the generic ballot by 4 points right now. But the important part of that is that the party in control of the presidency, he writes, typically loses ground over the course of the midterm election cycle. For context, at a comparable point in 21-22, Democrats led Republicans in the generic ballot by 3. They went on to lose the House by 3. In 2018, the generic vote. In 2018, Democrats extended their early margin by 6 to 8 over the 16 months to Election Day. And so the fact that they're winning by four now means that they'll probably be winning by more as time goes on.
Well, we hope so.
Also, most Americans say we're on the wrong track. At least if you look at historical numbers, that's typically what happens when that's no guarantee anymore. The polls are guarantee. History is no guarantee. But even if it doesn't repeat itself, it often rhymes. Most Americans say we're on the wrong track. 32% say the U.S. is on the right track. 58% say it's on the wrong track. Wrong track sentiment has ticked up 3 points since mid-May. The stability of pessimism underscores how deeply unhappy Americans are with their leaders, something that's constant throughout different news cycles. So that's important as well. And again, Trump's approval is underwater, falling on immigration and deportation. Really interesting graph here. Only on border security is Trump above 50% approval.
Border security.
And this particular poll differentiates three separate things that often everybody else throws together. Border security, immigration, deportation.
Yeah.
Three separate topics.
Okay, yes.
And they are separate topics. For example, border security, my guess is Trump's approval is at 51 because not as many people are coming across the border.
Yes, allegedly.
And for the moment, Americans think that's okay, even though they're increasingly being convinced that, maybe immigration's a good thing.
Yeah.
But there were too many people in their minds. It's just a fact. They voted that way in 2024. Too many people are coming in through the southern border, and people wanted that to be cut back. All they had was record numbers. Every single day, even the mainstream media would just repeat that over and over and over during the Biden administration, and folks didn't like it. Immigration, on the other hand, disapprove 52, approve 45 Trump policy. So they don't like how he's handling immigration. And as far as deportations go, that's even slightly worse. 53 disapprove, 43 approve. And folks disapprove of absolutely everything else. But if you want to go down all the way to prices and inflation, that is the one that people disapprove of Trump's policies the most. That's a 61% disapproval, 33% approve, healthcare 58-35. People are more unhappy with Trump on prices and inflation, even though we're not seeing the end result of the tariffs, as Diane the Wonk pointed out.
Yeah.
And we'll only start to see it some time from now. Even so, even as it is right now, it's Trump's worst issue, and folks do not like how much things cost.
Yeah, and I don't even know how many people are polling when they poll issues. Do they throw Epstein in there? I mean, there's Epstein polling, specifically, but
that's like 80% are unhappy with what the government is doing,
crazy.
And 3% are happy. I mean, that's pretty clear.
They need to throw in sly questioning. What about the cost of child trafficking? How do you feel about that? It's going.
Yeah, is it too expensive? Would you like to see those numbers come down? Do you think Trump has policies to help to mitigate prices there? What about the Federal Reserve? What do they do?
Right. Lower the child trafficking tax.
Is there an agency that deals with this? Yes, the FBI, except they're busy right now doing other things.
Right. They're all doing telethon phone answering, apparently.
Right.
Okay.
The big, beautiful bill underwater. 47% of adults have heard a great deal about it. Another 33% have heard some. And major policy components test poorly. Cuts to Medicaid, 23% opposed.
Oh, no.
That's even though it's not going to take place until after the midterms because Republicans are going to pretend it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Similarly, 62% oppose cuts to food assistance, otherwise known as SNAP. What we used to call when I was growing up food stamps.
Right.
By a slightly narrower 52-36, adults are against the additional DHS Border Patrol ICE funding. Only 36% approve of it.
Most of it's
and
going
the
to
bill's tax provisions extending Trump's tax cuts are opposed by 45 with 39% in favor. So nothing about the bill is popular.
Well,
Now,
Everyone
one
thinks
of
the
the
name is
things
funny.
that's important about this is it isn't just the numbers. As I first stated when we went into this, the vast majority of Americans have heard something about this bill. So when you go into the midterms, high awareness plus broad opposition means Mike Johnson and the other Republicans can't just explain it away
Vibes.
by saying, "Well, no, you're wrong. No, you're lying. No, that's not what it says. No, I haven't read the bill yet." I mean, they can't do that.
It'd be funny to see him try to continue to do that. I haven't read it yet. You passed it. It's over.
Well, I haven't heard about that.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. I didn't read the tweet.
I didn't read the tweet. How am I supposed to know?
Sure.
I haven't been told what to say. So, no, it's not going to work.
Good. I hope not. I note that you had mentioned Democrats leading on the generic ballot by 4%, which I believe we used to hear said as the minimum number necessary, thanks to gerrymandering, for that the Democrats would have to lead by, and maybe even higher, in order to garner a majority, and that even just a very narrow majority. And of course, in Texas and elsewhere, Republican state parties now contemplating a yet another gerrymander to make things even worse.
Yeah, 4 or 5 seats in Texas, maybe 3 in Ohio. The problem for them is California and other states are considering if they do that, then they'll just do it and get those seats back.
Yeah.
And so I don't know that it makes a lot of sense, but we'll see.
But didn't. And,
the Democrats are Democrats. The first thing they said is, well, that doesn't sound fair, so we're not going to do it. And then they realized how many seats they're talking about, and they said, okay, maybe we'll change our mind and we will do it.
Yeah. Well,
that is absolutely, you couldn't get more classic Democrat than that.
Really. It's true. And I mean, in a way, it's kind of good because when a lot of states that passed, nonpartisan redistricting commissions, et cetera, in the name of fairness, were told at the time, hey, that too is kind of unilateral disarmament. No, it isn't. All right, well, wait 10 minutes. Look, it is.
Hi everybody, this is Scott Anderson, your summary guy. Were you looking forward to an egalitarian democracy free of bigotry, misogyny, racism, and greed, where people of different appearances, belief, and heritage had a right to live without fear, and everyone could expect a basic level of health, stability, and safety throughout their life? Well, too bad. The plain fact is that we're heading in the wrong direction. And where we once had a voice in such things, increasingly we don't. Not exactly the kind of news I wanted to share, but there it is. However, if you're looking to join people who understand today's issues and can intelligently address the reality of today from your point of view, you can join us at Kagro in the morning. As you know, there aren't many of us out there, at least compared to them. We need to stick together, and by that I mean send us money. That is contributions to patreon.com, secure, reoccurring contributions. Those contributions keep this show on the air and us together. We've been through a lot together. The temporary loss of the presidency, we hope. The temporary loss of the House, the Senate, the Supreme Court, we hope. Face it, we are pretty much all that we have left. Remember, we couldn't do it without you, and you shouldn't do it without us. We're in this together, so thanks.
All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. We continue in our second half hour. I forgot to raise the news issue of the day, or I guess the celebrity death of the day. But this is in the news, and it's all over my email for some reason. I saw it yesterday, but I don't know. Everyone wanted to email about it today. Ozzy Osborne has died, which I guess probably there are a lot of people who thought only just now, but he's been around a long time. A very interesting figure and an interesting range of reactions to his death, but kind of went out as a bit of a folk hero, which is kind of amazing considering where he started. And I did see some interesting observations from people saying, that one of his top hits, Crazy Train, now sort of on the Jock Jams albums, essentially, and something you'll hear frequently at professional sporting events, which is supposed to be sort of like its indication that it's now part of Americana. here that's a family-friendly fare at this point, and somebody pointing out it's hard to explain to people who know him only from that, or say from his reality television show, which was also an interesting twist, how thoroughly convinced the parents of America were in the 1980s that Ozzy Osbourne was absolutely positively 100% a menace to society, had to be eliminated. It was the kind of thing they needed to marshal the forces of government to stop Ozzy Osbourne and not allow him to perform, label his records, ban his records. People were afraid anytime his band came to town to play a concert that all the kids were going to turn satanic and I don't know what, run away or maybe become international pedophiles and child traffickers, something like that. And meanwhile, all of the really, truly bad stuff was happening in the homes of the rich and famous who in some cases funded the campaigns against Ozzy Osbourne. But now, American hero, and goes out, by the way, with a giant charity concert raising millions of dollars for Parkinson's disease research, which is something he suffered from and played a part in his death. Interesting development, to say the least, and just something of an American story, despite the fact that he wasn't, born American. But okay, people are talking about it. Hey, Greg.
Hey.
Huge Ozzy Osbourne fan you are, as I recall. You
I'm really into heavy metal.
the Black Sabbath concerts all the time. Interesting figure, to say the least, and it is an interesting reminder, this weirdness of his transformation. Although it occurred to me that maybe it's due as much to his, like I said, to his reality television show.
Oh, it's absolutely
as anything else. And there's another guy who's important in American sociology at the minimum, whose reputation was entirely changed by reality television, and now we're stuck with him as president. And I don't think we've ever really reckoned with how badly damaged we've become from reality television.
Yeah, perhaps. So let me tell you a quick anecdote then about a heavy metal guitarist who played with Ozzy Osbourne by the name of Zakk Wylde.
That's wild.
Zakk Wylde. Of course, that wasn't his real name.
Oh, no? Oh, okay. He's a crossword puzzle guy for sure.
Yeah, his real name is Jeffery Philip Wieland.
What? Oh, okay.
Wielandt. Great guitarist. And he really loved all sorts of guitar styles, not just heavy metal. He liked bluegrass. He liked folk. He liked country. Mm-hmm. He was just really skilled at everything. I sent you his picture, though. Oh. He looks like Black Sabbath. So if you can imagine a Black Sabbath guy playing, Foggy Mountain Breakdown, it's pretty funny. So he had a session. This was told to me by a studio musician.
He looks like
who
Christy
plays
Nome.
Guitar. That he was playing with Ozzy Osbourne.
Yeah.
And Osbourne stopped the session and looked at him and said, "Zakk, you can't play that crap. It's too country. It's too I'm Ozzy freaking Osbourne. I'm the Prince of Darkness. Get that stuff out of my session." And the
now
point
we all wish
being,
we had the tape. Yeah.
The point being that on the one hand, people had their image to keep up.
Mm-hmm.
And the other hand, even if you're not a heavy metal fan, some of these musicians are just so remarkably skilled and aware of all the different other genres that they try to sneak into their playing. Ozzy wouldn't let them, but if it were up to him, he would have. So the whole idea of hearing heavy metal, but then there's a lick from Sally Gooden and some other stuff that you wouldn't really expect.
There's some overlap in some of these places, and some very funny novelty bands that occupy the space in between, like the bluegrass country cover band for AC/DC known as Hayseed Dixie.
Well, see, that's the whole thing.
Yeah.
It's not just in politics. Sometimes, like in music, you need a big tent.
Yeah, that's right. See,
and then you have other people who say, no, we got to be pure.
Zakk Wylde for president.
I'm the Prince of frickin' Darkness,
Yeah. Meanwhile, I think you could easily mistake this picture, minus the guitar. It could be a Christy Nome press conference. He's definitely got a lot of gear on and
it's all
gigantic
cosplay.
Hair.
Why, was it stolen?
Maybe. All right. So Ozzy Osborne. Well,
Hmm.
that was sad.
Yep.
Okay.
Anyway,
The
so
music lives on.
Ozzy Osbourne died.
He pulls higher
Now
than the
moving on to
president.
other things.
Right.
Other people died too,
That is well,
like
yeah,
the
it's one
actor
of the-
that played Theo in the Cosby Show.
Oh
He died.
yes, that was you're right. Just that, and I think just the day before that was Malcolm Jamal Warner. Is that right? I think
Mhm.
so.
And many other
And he was
shows.
like 54, and he apparently drowned swimming on vacation in Costa
I think
Rica.
he was trying to protect and rescue his family.
Oh
They
my
got
gosh.
pulled off by a riptide.
Oh no.
So it was bad.
Yeah.
And he was very talented, and
All
too early,
right.
too soon, too
I'll
soon
say.
for Ozzy, too soon for him.
Yeah, but getting closer to on time for Ozzy. He's
Well,
not a healthy guy, But
Yeah.
okay. At any rate, we miss
Sounds
him.
like Ozzy's death is something he would need to arrange with higher powers.
Yeah, or maybe that's why he went on as long as
The
he did.
negotiation didn't go well, and we've lost him. That's what's happened, apparently.
Okay.
So I want to go back to this G. Elliott Morris poll, because
Oh,
I
yeah.
think this is one nugget here that's sort of really interesting.
How's Ozzy polling?
Adults think both parties have moved too far right or left. This is fodder for the centrists who say you can't have Zoran Mamdani because people think 40% say the Democrats are too far left. 35% say they haven't moved that far. 9% say they've moved too far right.
Yeah, all right. I mean, some
They
of
have,
them.
but
Yeah. Only 9%.
On the other hand, if you look
out.
at the Republican Party,
Yeah.
42% think they've gone too far right.
Aha. That's
So
an interesting thing, too, though.
if you want to go to the center, there is a space
No.
in center politics. That's why it's best to describe yourself as center left, even if you feel like you're left,
Okay, then.
or center right, even if you feel like you're right.
Mm-hmm.
You got to get the center in there. Rights don't do that anymore. They just say, no, we're totally right, and we're going to be more right, and our model is Texas, and Greg Abbott, and that's what we want to do. And hopefully Ken Paxton will get in, and he's even more whatever Greg Abbott is.
Right.
Paxton is more so.
Right.
More
His wife says so.
more everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
Ex-wife.
Not yet. Soon, though. They're working on it.
Yeah.
On biblical grounds.
So all of that. Anyway, so I just thought all of that was of interest. Now, as it turns out, one of the things about the Epstein story that people are covering, and again, I don't know that there's all that much in the files that haven't been released. They've investigated
We don't even know
stuff
what
that's
files are.
that's gossip. It's
Sure.
often not that interesting. You can't release the really heavy duty stuff because it's illegal, which is to say child porn. So I don't know if there's anything in there, but if you're a conspiracy theorist, it
I am.
bothers
I
you,
just
and
became
that's
one.
what drives the story. And then for those straight reporters who simply can't wrap their head around the fact that why do people care about Epstein, they can find other ways
Really?
to write about it. Here's the Washington Post pointing out very accurately, as MAGA world focuses on Epstein, Trump seeks focus on anything else. In the past 48 hours, Trump has unspooled comments on a litany of controversies.
Yeah.
You may have even referred to it earlier. Tulsi Gabbard threatening to arrest Obama for treason, all that
He
nonsense.
did a treason.
A
So she
light
says.
amount of treason, yeah. All of which
No,
seem
lots of
designed to distract attention from the Jeffrey Epstein case. That is now the story.
Yeah.
And so that's something that reporters can cover comfortably and publishers can cover comfortably. We're not talking about the Epstein files. We're just talking about Washington's reaction to the Epstein files. And that's what we do. And so it's right in the wheelhouse, and we'll continue to do it. And by the way, yeah, it's good for clicks, but of course that's not why we're doing it.
No? Oh. All right. No, not at all. I find it amazing that there's any difficulty at all for press figures to how all of a sudden it's difficult for them to grasp why people are interested in a sordid sex scandal. But I don't know. Somehow the last 150 years, that's kind of all they've been doing.
Who would be interested in a sordid sex scandal that happens to involve
how can we sell that?
somebody with their own island that famous people travel
right.
to? I mean, what's so interesting about that?
Nothing, I'm sure.
Didn't they have a whole TV series about that?
Well, yeah, there are
Fantasy
several
Island or
ones.
something?
This is about 15 different islands are a very popular theme, I guess, in
Yeah.
television.
Gilligan's Island, Fantasy Island.
Right.
Not the same.
Yeah, well, there's every kind of island you ever heard of, and most of them I've lost track of. They're throwaway shows. There's 19 of them on cable, but okay.
Yeah. The Island of Dr. Moreau. There must be tons and tons. So this one notes, and it just lists all the different things. Over the past 48 hours, President Trump has asked his Truth Social followers, how did former USAID Administrator Samantha Power make all that money? He said he might scuttle a stadium deal if the Washington Commanders don't change their name back to the Redskins. He highlighted a memo from his Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, that said Obama administration officials planned a treasonous conspiracy in 2016.
Yeah, one of those.
He posted an AI-generated video of Obama being arrested in the Oval Office.
Mm-hmm.
And he even released a 3-minute mashup of clips that would seem more a place on screen at a sports bar. A woman snatching an approaching snake from the grass, a car sliding under a truck barreling along a highway, 4 people doing tricks on motorcycles and jet skis, and the release of hundreds of thousands of documents related to Martin Luther King.
Okay. Barron would.
And the through line here, they have nothing to do with the political problem that's Jeffrey Epstein.
Oh. Well, but that's the idea. Anything but.
Now, again, this is news because of the party involved. Republican, should have been capital letters and scare quotes. Yes. Republican strategist Alex Conan said the Epstein episode has called into question Trump's ability to evade electoral consequences of actions that would kneecap other politicians. Nobody turns a page better than Donald Trump, but this is different.
Okay.
And it's different because he's in a real fight with his base. Normally his base helps change the topic, not happening this time. And again, I mentioned this because on Monday, I think I talked about the fact, and if I didn't, I meant to, I talked about the fact that the newspapers like the New York Times and Washington Post were more than happy to claim that because unnamed sources named Steve Bannon had told them that MAGA was moving on from this, that therefore MAGA was moving on from this.
Right.
And those were the stories on Monday. It turns out 2 days later, these same newspapers are covering the fact that, hey, we haven't moved on from this. What's going on here? We'll pretend we never told you that on Monday. But our stories today say, this thing may have legs. Which I told you on Monday.
Right. And it was easy to see because, of course, they were saying it doesn't have legs. And, the easy position to take there is it does. Not just because we saw them, but because it's weird. But the New York Times seems to occasionally, maybe Monday mornings especially, to go out of their way to clean up a Trump weekend.
Right. This was, again, a Truth Social post at one point. Their new scam is what we will forever call the Jeffrey Epstein hoax. And my past supporters have bought into this bullshit hook, line, and sinker, Trump wrote in a post on Truth Social last week. They haven't learned their lesson and probably never will, even after being conned by the lunatic left for 8 long years. And the Washington Post notes that and other efforts to change the subject have so far been unsuccessful, experts and observers say.
Yeah.
The New York Times wasn't the expert they consulted, obviously, but then again, it's the Washington Post. Maybe they shouldn't. Instead, new attention has focused on Trump's own well-documented friendship, especially after a Wall Street Journal article about a salacious drawing Trump allegedly contributed to a 50th birthday present. Whether or not the Wall Street Journal has other stories is unclear. One of the things we'll get to is Trump threatening to sue them, or actually suing them, and the chilling effect that has on other people trying to cover this, or not. The Wall Street Journal will fight it. Discovery's a wonderful thing. Whether it's going to be a real lawsuit or not remains to be seen, and it'll take years. But the fact is that it's not going away. And whether or not there's more information that's going to come out remains to be seen. Again, there's nothing illegal about Trump writing Jeffrey Epstein and say, congratulations on your secret. It's just embarrassing. So is there other embarrassing stuff in there? Absolutely. Do we want to see it? Sure.
And there's more public record, too, that likewise isn't by itself incriminating. But
so take the illegality out of it. That's not what is in here that the public is especially interested. They just want to know what's really going on. really going on, wink, wink,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
only savvy people really know what's going on.
Right. More, video and photos of the two of them together surfacing as news people scour the archives. A different angle on it. Ron Wyden taking a different approach and reminding everybody. And this is probably where law enforcement, if we had any, really should be spending their time. And so it's good that there's somebody serious pointing at this. But reminding everybody that running a gigantic international pedophilia operation at the highest levels of government, as QAnon would have it, but involving some prominent figures, requires a lot of money. A lot of money to have your own island requires a lot of money. Money was changing hands, and Ron Wyden making the very good and true point that the real Epstein files that you need to be looking at is the financial transactions. They will tell the story of where he was spending his money and who you need to talk to.
And that's actually something legitimately in the public's interest to know about.
Yes, and he's raised it. Greg Sargent is making it his story of the day, week, month. So if you're looking for good in-depth coverage of what Ron Wyden is up to, he's the place to go.
Right. The other side of this story, and we talked about this a little bit before the show.
Why are we talking before the show?
The Washington Post, again, covering things Washington. That's what they do. So this headline is House largely grinds to a halt over Epstein files. Yes. Now, if you want to make the Epstein story go away, this isn't the way.
Well, right. I mean, at least why not provide something else to write about by, I don't know, well, even if it's failing to do something in the House, somebody's got to cover that. But if they just shut down, then there's a lot of people with nothing. By
choice from the Speaker, in other words. Republicans on the House Rules Committee, fearing Democrats will introduce amendments related to Epstein, continue to oppose allowing any legislation to reach the floor. Now, I had no idea whether they actually plan on doing anything.
Right.
But it's probably a good thing, capital letters, for the country if they don't do anything, given who they are.
Yes.
So I don't mind that they shut down.
Right.
But how long are they going to stay shut down for?
Well, until September.
Well, it's not that far away. But
right.
I don't mind not hearing from them for 2 months.
Yeah.
Republican leaders struggle to assuage a group of irate lawmakers. Irate? I thought this Epstein thing was going away. How could they be irate? Irate lawmakers who are demanding that the Justice Department release files related to deceased sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. The House will adjourn Wednesday, a day earlier than expected, for its 5-week recess in Washington, which was going to happen anyway, after Republicans blocked most legislation from reaching the chamber floor for a vote this week. Any move to release the files won't come until September.
Right. So they, like you said, they were going to have that recess anyway. This is their normal August recess, although it's a little longer than you sometimes see, but there's less going on. They were going to leave a little early for their August recess, but they also shut down all activity this week and last week, now making it, in effect, a 7-week period during which the Congress will do zero. 2 of them, they milled around in Washington and did nothing. 5 of them, they'll go home and mill around and do nothing.
So this is from Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, the Jewish space laser-obsessed weather vane.
Yes.
Says a key Trump ally who has criticized the administration on the issue said, quote, the call volume on Epstein, end quote, to her congressional and district offices has almost been 100%. And
she understands.
My amateur advice for anybody calling their representative is call your district. Don't call it, D.C. At the district, they'll ask you where you're from, and they'll listen to you, and they might even be from your town, and it's worth it.
Sure. It's you should absolutely bother them about this, and they'll be in touch with their district offices at least over the next couple of weeks as they go home. So some of them will be abroad, but they'll touch base, and they count the calls just the same.
Right. And the other thing, what we'll miss is Mike Johnson changing his position on the Epstein files daily. That was enjoyable. They have to be released. We need transparency, but not now and not for this president.
I did see somebody point out the reason he doesn't want the files released is if he sees the files, then he has to tell his son that he saw the files. So,
Yeah, well, that's okay. Just tell your son you saw the files.
well, that means he's violated something because
Well,
you know
fine,
what's in those files. All right. Chances are the son knows about the story anyway.
Right. So again, the story goes on to say House Republican leaders' inability to quell the rebellion from within their own ranks is the latest example of how the controversy related to Epstein continues to haunt the GOP after years of promising their base that a Trump administration would shed light on the matter. They do
Well, it
not
did.
appear to be letting the issue go upon the return to Washington. Thomas Massie seeking to force a vote in the House via a discharge petition, while leadership allowed a non-binding resolution to pass rules, but the Democrats wanted binding. I'm still sort of unsure why Johnson is so opposed to all of this, other than that it would annoy Trump. So what?
Yeah, I think that's all I know. That it would annoy Trump, and that's the only explanation I have. So, I mean, you're kind of stuck with it, and I can't think of another one that makes any sense. But this one doesn't make any sense either. But there it is. To say I want to be the speaker of nothing. We're not going to do anything.
Now, interestingly, Thomas Massie has joined Ro Khanna.
Yes.
On a different resolution, which would have the force of law to compel Bondi to release all unclassified records, documents, and communications.
Mm-hmm.
Their use of a discharge petition would let them go around GOP leadership and force a floor vote if they can collect 218 signatures.
Yeah.
I think there's a referendum on his leadership, Massie told reporters. Who is he going to pick, Johnson? Is he going to pick the pedophiles, or is he going to pick the American people? So Massey's not making any friends with the Republican Party by doing that.
Yeah, that's true, but he's used to that. What I found interesting about his
Why are there so few Masseys?
Well, mostly because they're threatening to murder them or their families, I think. But also, they're not starting with a good base of independent thinkers. We are talking about an entire conference of candidate in a box people, and if you step outside of the box and no longer are going to let them give you cue cards to run a campaign with, that's frightening prospect. I got here by following the formula. I guess I'm going to get bounced out of here if they don't tell me, if they don't give me the talking points. Massie is one of a few people that has, invented his own path to Congress in the Republican Party.
I mean, everybody else folds. Multiple examples, including Mike Johnson.
Yeah.
And it's astounding how quickly they fold. But so far, Marjorie Taylor Greene, who has her own constituency in a nut part, a crazy part of Georgia, she feels relatively secure. And Massie, for his own reasons, with his own brand, I guess more akin to Susan Collins than Marjorie Taylor Greene, feels fairly comfortable and doesn't really care if Trump yells at him.
Right, true. It was interesting watching him sort of, he was accusing various actors on both sides, basically of using performative stunts to deal with the Epstein thing, and then of course while he's trying to pass this thing, which very unlikely to see the light of day. But I also, and so you could dismiss that as a performative stunt. Any discharge petition, generally speaking, is subject to that charge. Right. But also, I do note that he was making a point of getting himself photographed with a binder that he put his legislation in, and that's the contents of the binder. And the binder says the Epstein Files Phase 2, which is a carryover from the publicity stunt that the White House held and brought all the right-wing influencers in and said, we're going to give you the Epstein Files. And they gave him a binder that said Epstein Files Phase 1, and they all held it up like they had gotten some juicy tidbit that no one else had seen before. But interesting just to watch him do an obvious stunt of his own to garner attention for him calling everybody else's work a stunt. So,
well, again, there's always a distinction to be made between voters, in this case Republican voters, MAGA voters, and electeds, in this case MAGA electeds. And the MAGA electeds fold, but the voters are not. And because the voters are not, they're pushing the electeds not to fold. And so they really find themselves in a very uncomfortable position. They don't know what to do about it.
Mm-hmm. I wondered whether it was reflected in the polling that you were talking about earlier. When we were talking about people who say, well, I think this party has moved either too far right, too far left, et cetera, and thinking about the 9% of Democrats who said Democrats have moved too far right versus the number of people who said, oh, no, they've moved too far left. And sometimes they're answering a different question mentally, I think, some of these subsets. When you say, have the Democrats moved too far right or too far left? Sometimes people are answering and saying, well, I'm a Democrat, so you're asking whether I have moved too far left or too far right. Whereas if you're asking about Republicans, well, those guys, you're talking about the electeds, because I hate those guys. Those guys have moved too far right. I've moved nowhere, so the Democrats have moved nowhere. And then, of course, others who say, well, I'm also talking about, well, when you say the Democrats moving left or right. Well, Zoran Mamdani, so they've moved too far to the left. Whereas on the other hand, you might say, well, I'm mad with, conservative Dems who are trying to be Republican light. They've moved too far right.
Well, you're a centrist because I'm a centrist because we all are, because everybody's either to the left or right of where I am.
Yeah. And the world revolves around me. And it should.
Absolutely.
So
it should, because I'm the voter.
Right. Well, okay. It's an interesting thing, and it plays out here.
Well, that's why it's so hard to make sense of some of those polls.
Yeah. But at least Marjorie Taylor Greene got the percentage thing right. That she can't say that the call volume has been 1,000% Epstein.
Yeah.
Like Trump did. Meanwhile, by the way, that she's got colleagues, Republicans in the House, who are going on various television programs and telling people, nobody is asking me about Epstein. Wherever I go home, they want to talk about the benefits of the big, beautiful bill. No one mentions Epstein.
In other words, just straight up lying.
Yeah. I mean, come on. First of all, you haven't been home.
Secondly, the polling says they hate the bill. So what are you talking about?
There's no chance people are like, if they're going to talk to you about that bill at all, it's not to come up to you and say, I love the benefits of this bill. You're not getting any. They're going elsewhere.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
anyway, that's a story for Wednesday, July 23rd, and we'll be back tomorrow. And
yeah. And so
I'll bet Jeff Epstein is still going to be in the news.
Probably true. And no amount of listening to Ozzy Osborne between then and now, Greg, is going to change that.
I listened to him for the country stuff.
I think, they could probably make a lot of money releasing those studio tapes if they still have them. So
remember when Jimi Hendrix did an acoustic album? Ozzy Osbourne should release his bluegrass stuff.
That's right. Absolutely true. Or
the bluegrass tapes by Ozzy Osbourne.
And please include Ozzy yelling at the guitar player to stop, too. And then and we'll all see if we can understand anything he's saying. All right. Well, thanks, Greg, for sticking around. We'll give it another chance tomorrow. Congress goes home. You can come back. All right. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. I got to get back to one of my own stories that I've been following, and I guess I should have talked to Greg a little bit about. Maybe we can discuss it a little bit tomorrow, but we'll just do this. We used to say more frequently, even though it's still just as frequently the case here, that the Kagro in the Morning Show, or before then, we used to say it fairly frequently about Daily Kos as well, and I think it's probably largely true of both, that it's like getting the newspaper early. Sometimes we were saying a day early just because that's easier. I don't know, that rolls off the tongue a little easier than saying 2 days earlier, although that's a little closer to the reality of it. Sometimes we went as far ahead as a week, like getting the newspaper a week early. And this comes up, this still happens, and we still find that this is the case where listening to the show and listening to the discussion on the show clues you into stories sooner than somehow the rest of the country. I'm not sure I can explain it exactly. It's like getting the newspaper a day early because if you go out and discuss with people what you've heard discussed on the show, they will say very often, I haven't heard that one. And then by the next day, it's a blaring headline that they do see. I can't explain it because we are reading you the headlines after they're published, which means after everyone else in the country has had a chance to read them too. But I guess most of the country doesn't care. Most of the country is busy doing something else, and they're just, not tied up in the headlines the same way we are. So all we're really doing here is reading you the reporting of sometimes the excellent reporting of fantastic reporters at great newspapers, sometimes the crappy reporting of terrible reporters at awful newspapers, and sometimes a mix of both. But you need to remember, as often as we criticize the media, the newspapers in general, they are the ones bringing you these stories. And sometimes they have bad spin on them, and sometimes they get bad spin on them later. Sometimes pundits apply bad spin to them, and then we end up blaming the newspapers somehow for having reported it wrong. But it's all out there. And so, Monday and Tuesday, we spent a tremendous amount of time, I'd say, describing the U.S. attorney's situation in New York and in New Jersey. I think we brought up the subject probably on Monday as we pointed out that the newspapers, who never report anything, were reporting correctly that Alina Habba's tenure as interim U.S. attorney for New Jersey was coming to an end, and it didn't look like she was going to continue in office. But, part of that comes from, I think, the natural inclination by reporters who sometimes are new to these stories, sometimes not, and therefore make mistakes, or just are forgetful, or it's just complicated, or you forget from time to time these are not normal times. You find out, guess what? Alina Habba was appointed as interim U.S. attorney. We understand that's for a 120-day period. They got out a calendar and they counted it up, and they were like, okay, the law says the period of her appointment is coming to an end. That's the story. Write it. She's an important figure in Trump world anyway, and occupies what used to be an important and well-respected position in New Jersey. So ought we not to cover this? Yes. What will you write? The law says the term is coming to an end. Well, what are the options now that the term is coming to an end? And we spent all day on that yesterday. The president can appoint her to the position permanently. The attorney general can, I guess originally her appointment to the interim position was also an attorney general appointment. You can be appointed permanently if no one is appointed and there's a vacancy. It's a very important position. You got to have a U.S. attorney at some level. And so there's a law in place that allows the federal judges of that district to meet and fill that position if necessary. If for whatever reason the president can't or won't or hasn't done that work, or the Senate has been dragging their feet or whatever, they can make sure that justice, the wheels keep turning in their district. And, why not trust the federal judges of the area to do that? It'll be a fairly bipartisan group in terms of who appointed them. So far there's no real serious problem with that law. Until now, except, the problem with it isn't particularly serious. So what happened yesterday was we told you the story of Alina Habba's term coming to an end, and also warned you, because we had read another newspaper from another area, the Northern District of New York, that a similar situation had cropped up and that they had found a way to just basically foist John A. Sarcone III, as we came to know him, thanks to the computer-generated read of the article. John Sarcone III, basically using all sorts of weird legal maneuvering to make it possible for him to continue in office. And the play, as you may have recalled, or maybe you haven't heard the shows for whatever reason, what's wrong with you? Here's how you do it. He's the interim U.S. attorney for the Northern District of New York. His term comes to an end after 120 days. The panel of judges assigned the job of deciding who to appoint to the job on a permanent basis. They're presented with a couple of options, and usually this is the case. One of the options is, how about the person who's been doing the job up until now? In previous administrations, that was usually someone competent to the task, and they said, hey, sure. In addition to which, it's probably the president's choice or the attorney general's choice, given that they appointed them the first time, will probably make them happy. They're doing an adequate job. What the hell will keep them? Well, this is the Trump administration, and the people appointed to the job are not particularly competent to the job. And not particularly, upstanding citizens in general, as is, maybe the case. As it turns out, the weirder and weirder the story gets around Sarcone, the more reasonable it looks to say, maybe not him, maybe somebody else. But the judges, then there was the weirdness of the story of Sarcone seeing his term come to an end and going to the news media and saying, guess what? The judges have decided to keep me. And then the judges also calling the newspapers and television stations and saying, guess what? No, we didn't. Either, and originally we didn't make any decision at all, or eventually we decided we actually would prefer to have somebody else. We have someone else in mind. And so now we have a fight between the guy who's supposed to be the interim U.S. attorney up there and the federal judges in the district saying, I've been reappointed. No, you haven't. Someone's wrong or possibly lying and all of this. And then we found out more and more about Sarcone. And I've got more on that. But then they pulled this maneuver, right? They basically said, I'll tell you what, we'll have the attorney general who originally appointed him interim U.S. attorney appoint him first assistant U.S. attorney for the same district, and not appoint anyone as an interim U.S. attorney, and not having the president appoint anybody or nominate anybody either for the job permanently at this point. I don't know where Sarcone's nomination, if there ever was one, stands. But they make him first assistant and then refuse to appoint anybody above him, and then say, well, as the highest ranking person in the office under the Vacancies Act, you are now slightly differently titled, but now you're the acting U.S. attorney for that district. And by the way, that gives you 210 days in office on top of the 120 you've already had. So if you heard yesterday's show or the day before on Monday, you're familiar with this maneuver. So when they published the news, that's it for Alina Habba, she's out because the judges aren't going to reappoint her, you already knew. No, there's the John A. Sarcone III play, which, it's in the neighboring state. How could you have missed this thing? So yesterday evening, I was watching the feed and saw, all right, I'll have to scroll back and see if I can find who it was, but a reporter watching the situation in Alina Habba's case, which, she's a more famous Trump world figure than John Sarcone III ever was, following the story and then saying, well, look at this. She says, whoa, that was some comment. It was a good, well thought out whoa. Jacqueline Sweet on Blue Sky, pointing out, by the way, she herself a serious journalism type person who's been published all over the place. Rolling Stone, The Intercept, The Guardian, Politico, The Nation, and more, she points out in her bio. And she's taken aback by does this look like X or is this Truth Social? I can't tell. But a post elsewhere that's been screenshotted and imported from Attorney General Pam Bondi, who says that Alina Habba has been doing a great job in making New Jersey safe again. Yawn, whatever. Nonetheless, politically minded judges refuse to allow her to continue in her position, replacing Alina with the first assistant, which is very interesting. First, I'll finish her comment. Bondi goes on to say, accordingly, the first assistant United States attorney in New Jersey has just been removed. This Department of Justice does not tolerate rogue judges, especially when they threaten the president's core Article 2 powers. She's blustering and screaming and pointing fingers. And of course, you understand the play that went on in New York and that they want to do the same thing in New Jersey, but we weren't 100% prepared, I don't think, for the attorney general running around accusing anyone who did anything else that they were entitled to do under the law as being guilty of treason in some way. See what's going on here? So Alina Habba's term was coming to an end. They were I guess they want to do the same play with Habba that they did with Sarcone. But the judges take a slightly different tack here. In the Northern District of New York, they simply acknowledged to the press, we did not decide to reappoint or to ourselves appoint Sarcone to the job. We didn't select him on any basis. We didn't select anyone else either. So the path was open for Bondi to name Sarcone first assistant and then promote him on that basis to acting, right? And in New Jersey, she could have done the same thing, except the judges in that case got together and said, well, we aren't going to appoint Habba to the job. We don't want to. Don't like her. Don't think she's good for it. Think there's somebody else better. Whatever. It's their prerogative, right? This is operation of law. The position is vacant, and they're going to appoint someone. So they appointed, guess who? They appointed the person who was, at the time, first assistant United States attorney for the District of New Jersey, which the Vacancy Act would have placed in the job had nothing happened. Had the judges done nothing, this person would have been in position to be promoted to acting U.S. attorney for New Jersey. So instead of just letting it lie and having them be acting, yes, U.S. attorney, they said, why don't we exercise our option to nominate, to appoint a permanent U.S. attorney here, and we'll take the next ranking person. And it's very non-political and non-partisan. We'll just take the person who's in the job now and move them up, just as the Vacancy Act would do. And for unknown reasons, except, they're always looking for a political fight, and they're always looking to condemn federal judges and lay the groundwork for ignoring their opinions and findings in cases and dictates, and said they've staged some kind of a coup here. These are rogue judges. They had the audacity to use their authority under law, which not only was already on the books, but why are they in a position to have to nominate somebody as U.S. attorney for New Jersey in the first place? And the answer is that Donald Trump and Pam Bondi haven't done anything on this front either. Yes, they nominated, or they named Habba as interim U.S. attorney for 120 days. And during that 120 days, what have they done to see her installed in the job permanently? Now, it was pointed out to me that eventually Donald Trump did, in fact, get around to nominating Alina Habba permanently, on a permanent basis, for U.S. attorney. When did he do it? It was June 30th and made the papers July 1st. That is to say, this month. So all this time, the 120-day interim period is meant to give the president time to come up with a considered decision on who should be nominated to the job. And so he only just got around to nominating her. The Senate Judiciary Committee has done absolutely nothing with the nomination, and they're about to go out on recess. So this vacancy is of their own making. Donald Trump and Pam Bondi together neglected their duties, forgot to name anybody as U.S. attorney for New Jersey, forgot that Alina Habba's term was coming to an end, and the judges said, well, we're not going on a 2-month recess. We need to have a U.S. attorney for New Jersey, so we'll just take the next person in line. And Pam Bondi says, not only do we disagree with that, but you are rogue judges for doing it. And then goes on to say, we won't tolerate rogue judges, especially when they threaten the president's core Article 2 powers. All right, wonks, are you ready? Is Miss Wonk still around here? Well, there were no Article 2 powers implicated in this at all. Now, it would be wrong for me to say, as I initially said, that the president has not exercised any Article 2 powers here, even though up until 2 weeks ago, it was true. Bondi, you may recall from our reading yesterday and Monday, the Attorney General is the one responsible for appointments for interim U.S. attorneys. And it was Pam Bondi, I'm sure at the direction of the president, because she is not an independent actor in any of this. Bondi was the one responsible for naming Sarcone to the Northern District of New York and Habba to the District of New Jersey. Trump, the president, you may remember him, made no effort at all to nominate, as far as I can tell, up until yesterday, had made no effort to nominate either Sarcone or Habba to the job permanently. Why the hell not? I still don't think that he's nominated Sarcone, but I'm not certain about Sarcone. But someone did point out to me, and if I have it correct and I can actually find the damn thing, I can credit the person properly. But it was pointed out to me, Eric Columbus. That's right. Not Christopher, but his younger brother, very young, much younger brother, Eric, pointed out Trump did nominate her for the permanent job. And that's when I found out. I had to go searching, too, because her nomination is not on the executive calendar in the Senate. And it's not on the executive calendar because it's not been reported out of the Judiciary Committee. And it's not been reported out of the Judiciary Committee because they haven't done anything with it. And they haven't done anything with it because it only came in the other day. So, okay, he did nominate her. That was an Article 2 power, true. But, right, until we found out that he had actually gone and done that, the truth was there's no Article 2 problem here. Trump made no effort to nominate her to the position permanently. And they all just hoped that the judges would decide to keep her. And they didn't. It's their prerogative. They decided not to. The rogues here, I would say, are the lazy president and the dopey attorney general who didn't understand how any of this stuff worked. But now they've nominated her. Fine. By the way, I don't know that anybody on in New Jersey, in the federal bench in New Jersey, were aware of the fact that she had been nominated. But they may very well have said this. I'll tell you what. What we are doing here is we are going out of our way not to threaten the Article 2 powers of the president. He hasn't gotten off his ass and told us who he wants to be the AG or the U.S. attorney here anyway. And at a minimum, what we're trying to do here is if he does want to make such a nomination, we don't want to get in the way of the Article 1 prerogative to consider that nomination for the Senate to confirm them into the permanent role. So what we'll do is we'll pick somebody to serve until a new nominee is named and processed and approved by the Senate. We're getting out of the way of the various other branches. But of course, Pam Bondi sees this as a huge incursion on Article 2 powers, which, you know, one, it isn't, and two, they weren't using. So what's the big deal? Anyway, I just found that kind of interesting that they were making these threats to challenge this as being a rogue judge. Also, by the way, I should point out that I was interested in Jacqueline Sweet's reaction to this because in addition to saying, whoa, she had said, who knew that New Jersey would have its own little constitutional crisis? And the answer to that, of course, is you did, because you were listening to the show on Monday and Tuesday. And now this is a big story, and you are well versed in it. So I thought that was pretty interesting. Now, in the meantime, it turns out that John A. Sarcone III is, weirder than we thought. We keep saying that we can't figure this guy out. So I think we left it yesterday by saying, remember how every time you look at John Sarcone from a new angle, you find out what is going on with him. He accused a guy of trying to murder him, a migrant. Woo! Of course. Trying to murder him by attacking him with a knife while I was out on the streets of Albany. And for whatever reason, when they actually prosecuted the guy, they said, well, maybe not so much attempted murder as menacing, which is a misdemeanor, 90 days in jail. I thought that was more serious. Okay, that was weird. Then there was the other weirdness, which was, okay, but also on the police report that he made about that alleged attempted murder that really was just a menacing, apparently, you gave your address to the police. And it's fake. Can you tell me something about that? Why is the address that you used as your home address when you filed the complaint actually a boarded up derelict building? And we found out a little bit about that yesterday, and that his excuse allegedly was, well, the building is being renovated. It's not derelict, except none of this stuff checks out. So we didn't read all the way back to June 27th, the article specifically dedicated to the questions about, as the headline says, U.S. Attorney lists, but the questions about his listing boarded up Albany building as his residence. And Brendan J. Lyons is the guy to go to up in Albany about this, because he's written all of the articles that we've read from the Times Union here. Or is it the Syracuse Times Union or the Albany Times Union? I don't know. But it's covering the vast northern country, as they say, up in New York. Okay, so what's the story here? Let's get into the details of it, because, gosh, it's weird. All right, if a computer was reading it to you, it would begin with the Dateline, which, it's a very heavy, photo-heavy article here, which is Albany. But after U.S. Attorney John A. Sarcone III, after he was threatened by the knife-wielding man outside a downtown hotel earlier last month, June, he filed an affidavit with police, you know this part, in which he listed his residential address as a 3-unit building in Albany. Not necessarily the whole building, but 1 unit. Under a U.S. statute, the chief federal law enforcement officer in New York's Northern District, that would be Sarcone III, is required to reside within its 32-county region. But the 3-story residence in the Sheridan Hollow neighborhood hasn't had a valid occupancy permit since last year, according to a city official. It has plywood boards covering its entrance and windows, and a no trespassing sign tacked to the plywood that covers the front door and prevents anyone from entering. A neighboring house, which is owned by the same Westchester County builder, is also boarded up and inaccessible. The Times Union became aware of Sarcone listing the empty building as his local residence after he wrote the address in an affidavit that he gave to Albany County Sheriff's deputies following the June 17th incident involving a man from El Salvador who has been charged with menacing the U.S. Attorney as he walked along Lodge Street. In a series of interviews over the past week, and again, this article dates to late June, but in a series of interviews then, the Times Union sought to verify the status of Sarcone's residency in the district. So, I'm just pointing out here that if the judges are considering whether to appoint him to the job permanently, one thing that might stand in the way is, didn't I just read the other day that it would be essentially, he'd be in violation of federal law, or someone would be, in making him or keeping him on as U.S. Attorney since he doesn't really appear to live here. Is that a problem? Should we choose someone else, right? Not sure. Let's sleep on it. Rogue judges. Anyway, on Monday, and then that again back in late June, the federal prosecutor said, that's the residence that I have, that I established when I got here. So I guess he, had to move into the district in order to accept the job, needed a place to stay, and decided that that would be his address. And there's a real story behind how he would decide such a thing. On Tuesday, again way back in late June, when pressed on the fact that the building had no occupancy permit and is boarded up, Sarcone offered a clarification. He said he has been, quote, spending 70% of my time in hotels because I can't get in there yet. Yeah, because it's boarded up. All right, spending your time in hotels, 70% of your time. What's the other 30%? I don't know. The other 30% is being menaced, I guess, by migrants on the streets of Albany. And, I don't know, let's say Arby's. Starbucks, perhaps, if he's upscale. That's Rick Santorum I'm thinking of at Arby's. Anyway, Sarcone, who is from Westchester County, like the owner of the building, and that comes up. There's a reason for that. But he's from Westchester County. Is that in the district? No, I guess not. So, all right. And what is Westchester County Southern District of New York? I don't know. Look it up, but it's further from Albany and Syracuse than, might otherwise be convenient. So he's from Westchester County and has a primary residence in the town of Cortland near the Hudson River. He also told the Times-Union on Tuesday that the property, the boarded up one, has been fully renovated inside, but that the owner is waiting for new windows to be delivered so they can be installed, as well as a new front door. And are they being effed up by Trump tariffs or import duties? I don't really know. To buttress his statement that the residence is where he intends to live anyway, he set up a three-way call that day with the Times-Union editor and Steve Saba, the Westchester County developer and tax preparer who owns a company called Symphony Holdings, which holds the mortgage on the property, but is not its owner. That's interesting, too, all by itself. Sarcone, who previously ran a private law practice and also served as a regional administrator for the U.S. General Services Administration, described Saba as a former client. Saba says, I buy and sell real estate. I also finance projects. I hold the mortgage note on the property and finance the construction and renovation. The inside is fully renovated. It's like a brand new apartment. So why isn't he in there? Well, we didn't get the windows and doors yet. Okay, so where is he staying? I don't know. Hi, everybody. It's me, David Waldman. Yes, the same guy who interrupts you all the time. Interrupting you one more time just to tell you again, another reminder that your contributions are what keep this show on the air, and Patreon.com, Patreon.com, is still among the easiest ways to make the sustaining subscription donations that keep us afloat. Are you ready for the pep talk about how our Patreon campaign is still going strong and growing? Well, too bad. Yeah, the plain fact is we actually are headed in the wrong direction, and whereas we once had about 175 monthly patrons, we're now actually down below 150. Time to recruit some more. Not exactly the kind of news I wanted to share, but there it is. For those of you in a position to support the show, Patreon.com does make it easy to make those secure, recurring monthly contributions to do so. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. We've been through a lot together. The worst of the pandemic, we hope. The worst of the insurrection, we hope. So go ahead and treat yourself. You don't need an excuse. Give yourself the gift of a little something you enjoy in life. Support the show. And of course, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running on those options too. So thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We couldn't, or at least shouldn't, do it without you. Hope you'll be on board soon too. Thanks for all your support. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Oh, before I continue with the weird situation with John Sarcone III, I forgot to mention that part of the play now in New Jersey, where I think they're going to try and use the same maneuver to reinstall Alina Habba for at least the next 210 days with the title of acting U.S. attorney. The complication there was that the judges, what makes Bondi say that the federal judges of New Jersey are rogue judges and abrogating Article 2 powers, is that they said, all right, we have a vacancy. We need to appoint somebody. It's up to us. It gives us the authority. We'll take the next in line, the first assistant U.S. attorney here in New Jersey, and make that person, we hope, permanently the U.S. attorney for New Jersey. And I guess, I don't know what the situation is, but I would guess that under normal circumstances, if the president were then to turn around and nominate somebody else, the person who was nominated to the job or appointed to the job by the judges might be willing to step aside because, it's not like they'd held the job since forever. It's a nice job to hold on to, I'm sure, but they might agree to return to the job of first assistant and get out of the way for the president's nominee. But they haven't figured that out yet. But the judges made this person, I guess, I have to read the article, to see whether they just appointed her to the job on a permanent basis or what. But instead, the administration, first of all, someone in the administration is claiming, no, her 120 days runs out on this week, on Friday. So she's still technically interim U.S. attorney. But there's actually some dispute about whether or not her term ended like Monday, Tuesday, or will end on Friday. But if it isn't finished until Friday, then, and this is what the administration is claiming, they can do this. They are going to fire the person who began this week as first assistant U.S. attorney and whom the federal judges of New Jersey decided to appoint to the U.S. attorney's vacancy. Fire her, and then, of course, run the Sarcone III play, which is to name Alina Habba first assistant U.S. attorney and then allow the Vacancy Act to move her up into the position of acting U.S. attorney and use the 210 days allotted to that spot to, I guess, finish up the consideration of her nomination to the job on a permanent basis in the Senate. But if her term expired on Monday or Tuesday, and therefore the first assistant was in line to become U.S. attorney, and the judges acted to make her U.S. attorney, that complicates the issue. That's why they have to claim, no, it doesn't run out until Friday. The judges named somebody to a job that isn't yet vacant, and therefore it's not effective. And our firing of that person makes it impossible for them to move into the job for any reason, because they're no longer employed by the Department of Justice, period. Although the truth is that I believe the judges are empowered to appoint from outside the Department of Justice as well. They can appoint anyone they like. So that shouldn't undo it, but, they're going to make any sorts of claims they can to make it look like they have a right to do things their way. And they do. They had the right to nominate her to the job, and they should have acted on it sooner. I don't know why they let it linger for as long as they did. Anyway, just wanted to point that one out. That's another of the weird claims that they're making, that they can't tell what day her tenure ends for some strange reason. Okay, so Sarcone, what's going on, right? He listed a weird address for some unknown reason. It's entirely possible. I can buy the story, and there's more to it, and we'll tell you the story, how it goes. I can buy the idea that he was going to move into this place. He thought it would be ready. He thought that was going to be his permanent address in the district. And so he may have signed up for, I don't know, his bank account there. Might have used that, or his, whatever other paperwork he might have had to fill out. What's going to be your address? It's going to be this. In the meantime, I'm staying in a hotel. That's true. If you need to reach me, call my cell phone, whatever. But when there was a police report being made, like now it's that's in June. It's been several months. He's staying in a hotel and whatever. So he could tell the police, listen, I'm supposed to be moving into this apartment, but I haven't moved in yet. Well, where are you staying now? They would be interested. We need to contact you. Where can we find you? And I don't know, maybe he thought it sounded really shady, like, I've been attacked by a migrant. Well, where do you live? In a hotel. Well, aren't you a migrant? That's not how I would put it, but I don't know. Maybe he thought that sounded weird. Or the cop said, don't give me a hotel room. I don't want that. What's your permanent address? And all he had was this one. Although he could have given him the Westchester County address and say, my mail gets forwarded from there. You can reach me that way. So what happens? So Sarcone, who is from Westchester County, told the Times-Union that the property has been fully renovated inside and they're just waiting for the doors. For how long have they been waiting for these doors? I don't know. So what does he do? He sets up a call. I'm just waiting. As soon as the window and door are put in, then I can move in there. It's like brand new in there. If you don't believe me, ask Steve Saba, the guy who owns it. So he arranges a conference call. Sarcone, of course, then acknowledges that Saba, the owner of the mortgage on the building, and I guess the guy who's financing its renovation, is a former client of his. What does Saba do normally? He is also a real estate speculator guy. I finance projects, I buy and sell. I hold the mortgage on this property, and I finance the construction and renovation. The inside is fully renovated. It's like a brand new apartment, minus windows and doors and tenants. And, as it turns out, occupancy permits and other permits as well. Saba said that he offered Sarcone one of the units in the building after he was named U.S. Attorney in Albany in March. So between March and June, this guy hasn't figured out I need an address. At that time, he promised Sarcone the apartment would be ready in April or May. So, okay, March, April, all right. You're offering it to me? Is this, am I paying for it? Are you bribing me? What's happening? Different story. Hasn't been investigated yet. But a quote says, between the supply chain issue, and whose fault is that? Between the threat of tariffs, and whose fault is that? Between everything else that has been going on, it's been very difficult to get the custom building materials that we need, Habba said. Isn't that something? Donald Trump, this is your fault. Because the manufacturing chain has not been operating the way it would in an optimal business environment, and that's all it is. So now, of course, Steve Habba has been deported. He's going to prison for criticizing the dear leader. Maybe. On the call, Habba also offered to provide evidence to buttress his assertion that the inside of the property is fully renovated, which sounds normal, right? I mean, either that won't be necessary or whatever, or what does it even prove for you to show me this? I mean, if he's not living there, isn't that really the story? But okay, sure. Show us the pictures. I could send you pictures if you want to, even publish them, which is fine with me, he said. A city building official told the Times-Union that any significant remodeling work beyond interior painting of a rental property, the sorts of things that like installing new windows and doors, would require a building permit. And how's Trump doing with his paperwork, right? Trump's not even ostensibly involved in all of this, but all Trumpy people, I guess, have problems with paperwork because there has been no building permit issued for that property since the Westchester County builder purchased it 2 years ago. So either it's not actually ready for occupancy, or it is ready for occupancy, but all the work was done illegally and without any permits, which is sort of a problem for normal people, and more so a problem if one of the residents of the building is supposed to be the top federal law enforcement official in the district. Now, building permits are not a federal issue, that's true, but you don't want to really be in some sort of weird situation like that, moving into or not moving into a building that the renovations in it are illegal. The Times-Union accepted Habba's offer to provide photos verifying the interior renovations, because why not, right? But over the course of the ensuing 2 days, he gave different excuses for why he could not suddenly locate those photos, and then berated the Times-Union for pursuing the story, and questioned why the newspaper was seeking the pictures that he had offered to hand over. Doesn't that sound a little mysterious and weird to you? Maybe even dramatic music. Either that, or it's the cuckoo thing, I'm not sure, or possibly...
That's bullshit.
That could be it, too. Isn't that something? Well, you could even publish the pictures. Okay, give me the pictures. I don't know where the pictures are. Well, when you find them, send them to us. Why are you always asking me for pictures? Get off my back. I'm just a businessman trying to make ends meet. What? So here's another quote from Habba, I guess. I hope you are not attempting to use this as a smear campaign against John. I hope not. Whose entire family I know well. Parenthetically, they are very honorable people. As that would greatly tarnish the Times-Union's reputation and reduce it to the likes of a tabloid, Habba wrote in an email on Tuesday, again back in June, just hours after offering to send the photos. That is odd, don't you think? I know many, many people at Fox, and such action would induce me to pen an op-ed in the New York Post, which isn't Fox, but of course is owned by the same guy, and that's what he meant, noting how this hit piece seemingly superseded actual news, considering all that is currently transpiring in New York, in America, and worldwide, a viewpoint that would rival even the biased trash seen on The View. Oh my God, the guy's beginning to lose it, right? Now, this is not Sarcone III, this is Habba, but still, weird. Please do not place me in a position to feel compelled to resort to any of this. We, as humans, are better than that, he added. I see. Later that night, I told you this gets weirder and weirder, right? I mean, at what point do you say, there is smoke here? And we know what they say about smoke being in a place. Typically, it is backed by or caused by fire, right? Later that night, Habba wrote another email saying that he had found several photos, but could not determine whether they were images of the interior renovation of the Albany residence or of other properties he has developed with various builders. He again questioned the newspaper's efforts to verify the information. Everyone knows his family resides in Westchester, but he maintains a residence in Albany due to his recent appointment to the Department of Justice. So the motive in questioning that dual residency is suspicious, he wrote. No. Even if you were to assume incorrectly that he does not maintain a residence in the Northern District, how could that be anything other than a desperate attempt to disparage him, even after he was attacked and nearly murdered by an illegal alien? Do you see the kind of level of insane distraction that's going on here? It's not. No one was saying anything about it. We just had some questions because the cops were like, hey, we can't reach you at this address. It's a boarded up building. And as it turns out, federal law requires that you live in the district. Do you live in a district? Yes. Where? I don't know. What are we supposed to do with that? Habba was referring, of course, to the incident the prior week when Sarcone had a troubling encounter, to be sure, with Saul Morales Garcia, who re-entered the U.S. illegally after being deported. The 40-year-old was initially charged with attempted murder, which gets dramatic music, right? But, well, it didn't work out. He was initially charged with attempted murder at Sarcone's request. I don't think we knew that. The charge was dismissed later that week by Albany County prosecutors. He now faces misdemeanor charges of menacing and weapons possession. No one was injured during the incident. When a reporter subsequently offered to meet one of Habba's representatives or the owner at the residence and view the interior renovations, Habba rejected it. I do not wish to connect you with my builders, as I will not subject them to being inundated with requests they do not understand, he wrote. Why? Don't they speak English? Also, again, I fail to see the urgency or even the benefit of your intentions, and now that I think about it, you are planning to publish John's personal home address in Albany after he was brutally attacked and nearly murdered? This is really amazing. The Times-Union has not disclosed the address or even the street it's on, due to Sarcone's contention that it's where he intends to live, though he doesn't, so it's not even good assassination coordinates. In an email Habba sent to the Times-Union on Friday, he, for the first time, blamed squatters for the delays in getting the apartment ready for Sarcone. Early in March, after his appointment, I arranged for him to rent an apartment just steps from the courthouse. Who's giving out the location now? It was not completed yet, but was on track, and unfortunately the building was broken into by attempted squatters who were unable to remain, but did manage to vandalize quite a bit and set the restoration back quite a bit. A neighbor interviewed by the Times-Union said she had not seen construction activity at the residence in at least a year, and that the work had been done after the building was purchased by the Westchester County developer a couple years ago, appeared to be minor demolition work. And it's been almost a year since we've had seen anybody, she said. They had a padlock on the door, and it looked like someone kept kicking in the door. And eventually, me and my mom just called the police because we were scared that somebody would be in there and would try to live in there because they've been leaving their clothes and stuff out in the front of the door. We were just scared that someone was going to set it on fire. I don't really know how that follows, but okay. Public records indicate Albany police responded to a complaint about squatters at the residence in January. But, well, there's more. During the telephone interview on Tuesday, Habba disputed that the builder needed a permit to do the renovations that he claims have been done to the property. He said that replacing the front door and exterior windows does not require a building permit. There's a difference between a reconstruction and a renovation. With a renovation, you're only replacing old things exactly the way they were, and none of that requires a permit, he said. Replacing old windows does not require a permit. Replacing a front door that's busted does not require a permit, as long as you're not restructuring where things are placed, like moving the toilet. And we didn't do any of that, except that it was a brand new building, or it was just like a brand new apartment, except now it isn't, because if it was, I would need a permit for that. You see what's happening here. Habba, who also runs a tax preparation business that under normal circumstances, I would say you should probably investigate how he does his work there. Well, guess what? I told you there's more. Habba pleaded guilty. And you know what happened? What kind of person pleads guilty? Not just guilty people, but usually people tied up in law enforcement actions. You don't just walk around saying, I plead with you, I'm guilty morally of some failing. Pleaded guilty 6 years ago in Westchester County to 2 felony charges of criminal tax fraud. What do you know? It's amazing how he runs his businesses. He was sentenced to 5 years of probation. He paid restitution of about $33,000 to the State Department of Taxation and Finance and a bank, according to state officials. His company, TaxPro, was sentenced to a 3-year conditional discharge. The investigation stemmed from allegations that Habba had sold a previous tax preparation business for $3.2 million, but failed to report that income or file his own personal tax returns in 2014. Is that the guy you want doing your tax returns? Now, Republicans would say yes, but the indictment in the case also had charged Habba with identity theft for allegedly using another person's social security number to open a credit account. But those charges were dropped, according to court records. It wasn't his first brush with law enforcement. In 2009, Habba pleaded guilty to filing a false state personal income tax return and failure to file corporation franchise tax returns, according to the State Department of Taxation and Finance. As part of his plea, he was ordered to pay $400,000 in restitution of combined back taxes, interest, and penalties, officials said. In the email he sent to the Times-Union on Friday, Habba said those cases related to a totally bogus criminal charge that dates back to 2009, whereby a disgruntled former employee with childhood connections to a state agent managed to weasel into a minor criminal charge for which I accepted a plea in order to avoid mounting legal fees. Richard LaJoy, director of Albany's Department of Buildings and Regulatory Compliance, agreed that some renovations, including replacing toilets or refinishing flooring, don't require a permit as long as plumbing and electrical wiring are not being relocated. But he said the replacement of exterior windows and doors would require a permit. Well, that is interesting. LaJoy confirmed that the Albany property's residential occupancy permit expired more than a year ago, which he said is a code violation. He visited the property several days ago after the Times-Union inquired about its permits and said the owner was subsequently issued a citation for failing to register it as a vacant building. LaJoy said it's possible the City Office of General Services had placed boards over the front door of the vacant property earlier this year in response to the neighbor's call about the door being kicked in by trespassers. A representative from National Grid also visited the property in recent days, posting a notice on the plywood covering on the front door that reads, "Your gas service is at risk of shutoff," and requesting access to the building to inspect the gas meter and piping. LaJoy said the city generally confirms that vacant buildings that have been boarded up have their utilities shut off and meet other safety criteria to lessen the likelihood of flood or fire, outcomes that can lead to unwanted demolitions. That's an interesting way of putting it. If it changes status and goes from occupied to vacant, we're supposed to be notified because they would then have to register it as vacant, he explained. There's a whole requirement under the vacant building registry that mandates all utilities are to be cut, gas, power, water, and then you have to schedule the interior inspection within 7 days of registering it. The residential building and the one next door are owned by limited liability companies that were established 2 years ago by a man Habba described as, quote, somebody that I do a bunch of projects with. The man, who lists an address in Westchester County and could not be reached for comment, also owns the property next door, which is similarly boarded up, but appears to be registered as a vacant building. Although Sarcone told the Times-Union that the owner of the building where he intends to live had, quote, totally built the inside. LaJoy said a city building inspector had examined the property and saw no evidence of recent renovations. The neighbor said she has not seen anyone during the past 2 years carrying appliances, fixtures, or other materials in or out of the building. If you go by there, you'll see the windows are boarded up, Sarcone told the Times Union on Monday. Well, that's because the replacement windows were backlogged due to supply chain issues, but they're supposed to be in soon. And yeah, it's not that bad. It is what it is. Well, it is that. When asked Wednesday if he'd ever been inside the purportedly renovated space at any point in the more than 3 months since his appointment, Sarcone, whose office in the federal courthouse is within walking distance of the property, said he had not. He said he had been provided photos of the interior, unlike the Times Union, when he agreed to move into the property, but no longer had those images and could not provide copies of them. He pledged to ask Sabo, what's going on here? I pledged to ask him. It's unclear how rigidly the U.S. Department of Justice enforces the residency requirements in its U.S. attorneys and assistant U.S. attorneys, who are also subject to the rule. The statute indicates that an exception that allows assistant U.S. attorneys to live within 25 miles of the district where they work. There are similar exemptions for U.S. attorneys in Manhattan and Brooklyn, as well as in the District of Columbia, but the federal statute spelling out the residency requirement for U.S. attorneys is murky on how soon they're required to move into a federal district once they've been appointed. U.S. Attorney General Pamela Bondi appointed Sarcone as interim U.S. attorney for the Northern District on March 4th. It's unclear whether Sarcone was even required to move into the Northern District immediately or whether his decision to stay in hotels over the past 3 months is allowed under the rules. I'm sure it probably is. Sarcone was part of President Trump's legal team during the 2016 campaign, tapped by the president's administration in March to head the sprawling district, which again stretches from Syracuse to Kingston and Ulster County and includes the state capital as well as the entire North Country. The office has 49 assistant U.S. attorneys, 4 special assistants, 41 staff members, and 9 other contract staff members. Under federal statutes, Sarcone's appointment as interim U.S. attorney has, what's the day limit? 120 days. Right. That period runs out, of course, next month and now has. His position is considered interim because he was appointed by the U.S. Attorney General and not the president, whose U.S. attorney appointees are permanent but must be confirmed by the U.S. Senate. On Friday afternoon, a panel of judges from New York's Northern District was scheduled to meet with Sarcone and decide whether to extend his interim appointment. Okay, so I think they have the power to make a permanent appointment or, I guess, an option instead to make an interim appointment or extend an interim appointment. If the judges do not clear the way for Sarcone to continue in the position, the president could appoint someone else. Right? Why not? You could exercise that. No problem with your Article 2 powers. The judges could also appoint another person as U.S. attorney, although the president's administration could remove that person. There's the answer to that one. I don't have to stay there, Sarcone said to the boarded up residents. I could get an apartment elsewhere or anywhere. Yeah, you could. So where are you going to go? This interview is over. So I don't know. We really didn't need to spend that much time on John Sarcone per se, except for one that could indicate how Alina Habba finds herself back into position and probably does describe the path that they'll take. I don't know if anybody thinks that she doesn't live in the area. I think she does. All of New Jersey is one district. So she lives near the Bedminster golf course, last we heard. So that's not an issue. But, it's just weird and weird and weird. And the more you pry into, the more you peel back and just ask normal questions. Where do you live? I live here. No, you don't. Where do you live? Well, hotels. Well, okay. Why did you tell that? And that's fine. Why did you tell me you live there? Well, because it's being renovated. No, it isn't. I have pictures that prove that it is. All right. You could see the pictures. Great. Show them to me. I lost them. I never had them. Why are you asking me this? Do you know what's going on in the world? What about my murder? They're all like this. It's crazy all the way down. All right. Now, I guess we'll just wind things up with the AP's report on what's up with Alina Habba, because we've decided to make that the topic of the week. And there's so many other things that I need to tell you about, but luckily we have Thursday and Friday to do that. AP reports Trump administration fights to keep ex-Trump lawyer Alina Habba as New Jersey federal prosecutor. And they don't need to fight. They just need to nominate her and then appoint her as interim U.S. attorney, and that would have been fine. And now, of course, they have the Sarcone, what we'll call the Sarcone III maneuver, to name her first assistant, fire the old first assistant. So, what's up? The Justice Department has fought to keep Donald Trump's former lawyer, Alina Habba, in place as a top federal prosecutor for New Jersey after a panel of judges refused to extend her tenure and appointed someone else to the job. Habba, who had been named interim U.S. attorney for the state in March, appeared to lose the position Tuesday when judges declined to keep her in the post. Acting under a law that generally limits the terms of interim U.S. attorneys to 120 days, the judges appointed one of Habba's subordinates, Desiree Lee Grace, as her successor. But just hours later, Attorney General Pam Bondi announced that she had in turn removed Grace, blaming Habba's removal on, quote, politically minded judges. We don't really know why she thinks so, but she ended up calling them rogue judges and said that the Attorney General's second in command, and this being Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche, who supposedly is busy trying to get a meeting with Ghislaine Maxwell to find out what she knows 10 years after the fact about the Epstein files. Anyway, he's also going to be in charge of fixing this. The second in command, Attorney General Todd Blanche, said in a post on social media that he didn't believe Habba's 120 days expired until 11:59 p.m. on Friday. White House spokesperson Harrison Fields said in a statement that Trump has full confidence in Habba, yada, yada, blah, 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 despite the opposition from two New Jersey senators, both of them, of course, and both Democrats, who potentially have the power to block her nomination, but they haven't even tried to get her nomination through. The judicial order appointing Grace, signed by Chief Judge Renee Marie Bum, B-U-M-B, don't ask me, didn't list any reasons for picking her for the position over Habba. Grace's LinkedIn page shows she's served as a federal prosecutor in New Jersey for the last 9 years. Messages seeking comment were left with Habba's office and the Justice Department, but I guess they resulted in nothing. Then, of course, a review of her contentious tenure as New Jersey's top prosecutor. And a reminder that, yes, she's been nominated for the job permanently, but nobody's made any movements to actually put her in the job. Nothing rogue about that. If there are rogues, I guess it's Chuck Grassley. Call that guy and find out why the nomination hasn't moved.
NetworksRadio.com. You have been listening to Kagro in the Morning with David Waldman.
All right, time now to hand things over to Justice Putnam for the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and maybe he'll bring you audio. I'll have to truly do this tomorrow. The crazy pronouncements that Trump made yesterday, we couldn't fit it all in there today, but he'll be rounding up stories from around the country and around the world, and guess who's going to be in the news? Jeffery Epstein. Don't say the name Jeffery Epstein unless you want to talk about Jeffery Epstein.